Hello everyone, today I'm joined by Bronwen Vearncombe and we're going to be talking about a fascinating story, an inspiring story of how she quit her job working in the corporate world and within a couple of years had really systemized her life so that she could spend her time doing more of what she loves. She now travels the world with her husband. She's accompanied him on a round the world clipper race. She lived in New Zealand for 6 months and has spent the past 6 or so months living in Namibia, can't say that word, on a wildlife reserve, doing what she loves best. She's able to do that because she has truly created herself a remote lifestyle, and it's my pleasure to welcome her to the show and to find out how she did it and what we can learn from her experiences.
Hi, Steve.
Hi,
nice
Bronwen.
To see you.
Absolutely lovely to see you and have you on the show. If you're listening in, which you probably are, and you hear some wind in the background, that is because Bronwen is sat on the top of her house. It looks from the video, as I'm doing this on Zoom at the moment, with the most beautiful backdrop that I genuinely thought was a Zoom virtual background when she switched on the camera. And so apologies if there's a little bit of background noise on her side, but she is living the dream, so we'll let her off. Okay, so Bronwen, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. It's been a little while since we last spoke. Tell me your story in just a summary of how you've ended up being in Namibia with your lifestyle paid for really by your businesses back in the UK, and you're able to do that totally remotely. Just give me the 5-minute summary.
Yeah, absolutely. 5 minutes. Here we go. So 7 years ago, I was a banker. I was a career banker in Lloyd's Bank and thought, I couldn't retire until I was 67, certainly couldn't take my pension. I decided with my husband to investigate other ways of creating a relatively passive income, and that was property investing. So we spent quite a while learning, and within 2 years, as you said, we've been able to replace our corporate income through property rental. The key for us was always freedom of location, because we don't want to be managing our businesses, and we have now 5 of them, 4 property ones and an education one. So the point for us was always to outsource as much as we possibly could so that we can enjoy working and volunteering abroad and doing things that we're passionate about, as you said. So Namibia here in Africa, working wildlife conservation is a big passion of both of ours, actually. And John sailing around the world. I mean, that really was the catalyst for us, Steve. John wanting to do that round the world adventure, it was going to take 12 months. So how could we build our business so that he could basically take 12 months out? Now, I followed him around the world. I flew, but I had my laptop and I had work to do. And it was really the catalyst for saying, have we got the right systems in place? Do we need to do this differently to make our life a lot easier? So that was back in 2017 when we did that year out. And then we discovered systems and outsourcing after that. So that's really the story, is that, we've now become much more flexible, having been through the program and understood the best way of making our businesses more efficient and self-sustaining, really.
Okay, so for a terrible pun, I guess it probably wasn't all plain sailing. But before you came and worked with us, and for sort of full disclosure, Bronwen is an old client of ours, and she's been through our Systems for Outsourcing program, as she mentioned. But I'm actually interested to know sort of what happened before that, because you'd actually started your business or started your property journey way before that, and actually written. Your book's brilliant, by the way. So if anyone's not read Bronwen's book, then I highly recommend it. It is how to build your dream life. All about her journey into property, and it's a brilliant look at a really realistic path into property, not all jazzed up into something that it's not. I'm not trying to sort of sell you on a dream that's not a reality. So I really enjoyed reading it, and I know you wrote that book, and the story in that book is really the pre-Systems for Outsourcing story.
Yes.
And so I'm interested to know how did you transfer yourself from a corporate world into the world of business owner? Because that is a huge challenge for so many people, and a journey that many people take but find very, very difficult. So what were your challenges you overcame? How did you do that, and what lessons can you share?
Well, the big thing is to get the right education at the beginning so that you can manage your risks and understand some of the pitfalls. Now, of course, it's not all plain sailing, and there are problems that arise, and that's all in my book, Building Your Dream Life. But the key for us right at the beginning was to set those goals and to understand what did we want to do with our time once we'd created that freedom. And it was not to manage our rental properties. So right from the start, John and I were both always challenging ourselves and saying, well, we created a say multi-let house. We'd bought it, we'd determined the strategy, we'd organized the refurbishment, but there was no way that we were then going to manage the tenants and manage the problems that they might face, when the Wi-Fi wasn't working and that sort of thing. So right from the beginning, we said, we're not going to manage our properties. However, when you're building a residential sort of letting business, there's so many more things that you don't think about that suddenly arise. And yes, you've got your own business. We had limited companies. We started to do commercial property. We did some massive conversions of properties. And as we were growing, that first 2 years, really, first 2 to 3 years, you're growing so fast that you don't have time to step back and look at the things that maybe you could do differently. So that was the thing that we felt in that year around the world. It was really obvious to us where the stresses and strains were and where the risks were for us, where we weren't in the UK, we were managing on laptops, but maybe we weren't as secure with our businesses as we really needed to be. And that's from a number of issues. So we had people manage the property. So we thought, great, we don't need to do anything. Well, no, you do. And we were still buying properties. We were still doing new strategies. And even though we were away, we were still able to continue to build the business. And of course, that then is, also other things that arise, and different systems and things that we were starting to use we weren't consistent with across our businesses. And so coming back from that clip around the world and then the two of us deciding that, we need to get more control in our business, but we still wanted to travel. And we decided we would go to Australia, but we'd started the program with yourself, Steve, before we went to Australia. And I'd determined that whilst I was in Australia, that I would write a book. And that is no mean feat for somebody like me who likes to do stuff, not actually sit down and write. So I had a book coach, and I had a drumbeat of stuff I wanted to do. And this book was not easy. It was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. But there's no way I could keep running all the businesses and write a book and still feel that I could do other things with my time. So it was that point that we thought we've really got to bite the bullet and look at how can we become a little bit more stable and consistent with the way that we ran our businesses, basically. Yeah.
Okay. And just trying to sort of dig into a bit more details. So what specific things did you do? What turned you from that place where you were sort of slightly systemized and outsourced, or quite a lot, to be fair, far more than most businesses ever get to. But then now you seem to be in a different place, and that sort of transition from being somewhat outsourced, somewhat systemized, to being where you are now. What changed? Like, what did you do? How can the people learn from that?
Yeah, so we had other people working with us like agents for our residential businesses. We'd also set up a trading business, so guest house business, which is much more responsibility, if you like. And again, we were outsourcing, we were working with people who could manage the business, but the business was our business. We set it up and set up the systems and processes in the back end of that. So room booking systems, the sort of accounting systems, really important, and being able to assess the person that was managing the business on our behalf became really important. So auditing and having your regular monthly assessment of how's the business going. You know, I'd been a banker at the other side of the desk, helping small businesses, and suddenly I was thrown the other side, and I recognized how difficult it is in those first few years. And if you can have information and data at your fingertips that you can rely on and trust, so turnover, bills, invoices outstanding, bookkeeping, accounts, but also things like, you know, the laundry business. You know, we outsource the laundry, but of course, you know, there's a lot of things that just knock on to that. So that was our residential, it was our trading business. And then we were doing a development. So we'd joint ventured with a builder. So we would always try and work with experts. But our skill with that was the finance, was bringing finance to that deal. But then, of course, the finance brings with it the rigor of, you know, how are we doing against where we said we were going to be in terms of cost, checking that the builder was doing things according to the plan as well, and keeping our investors informed. So suddenly we had a lot of stakeholders in our businesses. And I set up an education business just before we went around the world as well. That started to take off. And I wanted to spend my time doing things I loved doing, which was not the detail. You'll remember from some of our conversations, I think, along the way, we both pushed back at the detail because we found that was not something we liked doing, but we had to get into that so that we felt we could then outsource it. So so there was all sorts that we did, and it was a good 12 to 18 months before we could truly say, we're in complete control. Well, not 100%, I would say, but going from maybe, I would say 30%, a third of the business we felt really comfortable with, to now at least 80%, I would say, is a massive turnaround. Some of the things that we learnt and we've implemented are things like LastPass. So having control over your passwords, and so that when you're working with other people and VAs and our PA and our admin lady and our bookkeepers, LastPass has given us massive control as to who has access to what. And then if somebody leaves, we can change that control, and we feel that we're secure and safe. Things like Asana, massive thing for us is being able to not just rely on emails. Now we rely completely on tasks in Asana, so that it's very clear which business is operating and who's responsible for what. And we've had to go through quite a cycle of educating the people that work with us in our businesses, and they've found that difficult. And again, another 12 months, I would suggest, before they're completely comfortable. And now they're telling us when we need to do something in Asana. So it's really turned around in the last 2 to 3 years. So I left my job five years ago, went around the world 3 years ago, and was a bit uncomfortable then, really. We continued to build the business, and now I would say that we're completely comfortable, such that in Namibia we've been volunteering for 5 months, where we really haven't been accessible. We would look at Asana from time to time, but we've been completely reliant on our team, and that's a complete switch around. So yeah, feel very comfortable now that location freedom is working for us, because we've got systems and processes that work for us and with us, and we're much more in control. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic to hear. Really inspiring stuff. You mentioned Asana task management tool there, and we've used Asana for many years. It's something we talk about a lot on our course. What else have you used? Because you talked a lot about reporting, or about actually getting the pulse of your business, and about seeing the numbers. And so Asana's great. You can see who's doing what. But I think that the idea of actually having the right figures to look at, to be able to know, is my business working the way it should be? That's a huge challenge, I think, for a lot of people, is to understand what that actually means. Because it's easy to say, oh yeah, you need reporting, you need to know, well, if you don't watch it, it doesn't improve or whatever. But how does that work in practice? What do you actually do to make that happen?
Yeah. Well, a lot of it's around Xero, using Xero for our bookkeeping.
Xero Accounting software.
Xero Accounting software. So Xero Accounting bookkeeping gives us control, understanding how to use that for reporting, but also having great bookkeepers who can provide us with the right data in the right format. We were doing a lot of that when we were going around the world. I can tell you, there was a lot of time that John would spend in port. He might have like 5 days. That's all. And I was giving him tasks to just check the bookkeeping. We don't need to do that now. Obviously, from time to time we will, but any issues, we have a number of people that, that know how we need things done. We've also got an equivalent really of a finance director. So somebody that we're now prepared, because we understand it, prepared to pay a little bit more for somebody who will just be our sort of more strategic eyes and ears on the numbers. And then we've got great property accountants, really good. So if we can use our bookkeepers, my daughter's one of them, we can use our bookkeepers, making sure that they run different sides of the business. So we've got our trading business, guest house business is very different from the residential side. It's VAT, registered, and it's a very different business. So making sure that we've got different processes for the two sides of the business. So it's not only just the right people, but then having a reporting system that gives us those regular numbers, so we can just assess, are things working? Are we achieving our goals? And quarterly, half yearly, annually, we'll have some reports that we're able to know that, well, we know that they're consistent now, whereas in the past we had to then spend a long time just checking and going, no, I think the bookkeeping didn't quite work. It's not in the right place. So people and systems together for us give us freedom. It's not just systems. We can't rely just on systems, because we want time freedom as well. But we had to go through the pain really of, year and a half, 2 years of just checking and making sure that we understand it ourselves, and then we can train people up and make sure people are doing things in the way that we know works best. Yes, so it's confidence now for us. And I remember the pain that we had, it's not easy. I think if anyone thinks, oh, you can just outsource it, we talk about VAs. We used a VA for quite a while before my daughter came in on the business. And again, it takes a while to build the confidence with each other and make sure you've got the right person in the role. And yeah, you've got to go round that loop a few times before you can be absolutely confident that things are working in the way that you need it to. So yes, it's painful, but when I heard you were doing the podcast, I thought, okay, I'm a little bit different. I've never managed my own properties, so but even if you do have other people help you, you still need this support and other things around you to really complete the whole picture. So yes,
interesting. So a lot of people come to me talking about properties, about property management, and they often come on our course, or they may come on a call with me, and just for me to give them some advice. And unless you are a company with, say, a turnover of, or profits in the region of 500k sort of mark, I would never dream of saying to somebody to manage their own properties, because I think it is a total waste of one's time. You don't make money in property by managing. You make money in property by acquiring new property and growing your portfolio. And that's, as a property investor, what I believe people should focus their time on. I use property management companies. I didn't for 15 years, and it's one of my biggest regrets in life, because I know that if I'd done that from day one, I would have had so much more time freedom. And it really took me to do that, to realize that the waste of time it is for me to do something that actually there's a whole industry built up around it. And you mentioned bookkeeping as well. So these key elements to a business. So when I talk about outsourcing, it's always quite simply anyone but you. And there are certain things that you mentioned there: bookkeeping, accounting, financial advice, property management, laundry, whatever your business is about, there's going to be certain elements of your business. You can literally just go pick them up and hand them to somebody who knows exactly what they need to do. So you don't need to go and learn it all yourself and then train somebody else. You just go, no, I'm going to pay you a little bit more and then give that whole thing to somebody. So I'm totally behind you on this. I think it's one of the most important take homes from this conversation so far, is that you don't need to know the detail of everything in your business.
I always advocate working with experts. And I coach and mentor people in property, and it's very, very early days do I talk about working with experts, because I don't want to be an expert on tax. If you take it to that extreme, I don't want to be an expert in contracts, people who are tenants, because I know that I can make mistakes, and I'd much rather rely on an expert, because when things go wrong, they know what to do. So it doesn't matter what stage it is or what type of business, you're always going to need experts who know more than you do. So another example of our trading business, our guest house business, is the booking system, the room booking system. Now, anyone in serviced accommodation will know, they might have Airbnb, and, they might set up a system themselves and then need to change it. Well, we started with a sort of system called Beds 24, and we weren't sure. We just picked it because it was cheap. And luckily, because we've reassessed it a couple of years ago, it is actually a really good system. But we've had to now put in place a system to take bookings straight into invoices, straight into Xero. Now, those are 3 different steps that we were having to do manually, and of course they're fraught with error potential. So we've only just cracked it, actually, Steve. Only just. It takes some technical capability of people to write these programs to make sure that it works. But again, making things simpler and easier to use is what efficiency is all about. So you can make your business more efficient, then you can make more money, or you could do more business. So it's funny when you look back over 5 years. It's not very long, but we've learned so much, and that's why I love to help other people and recommend experts like yourself, because I don't think we would have bitten the bullet, to be perfectly honest. We'd still be worried, I think, now, if we hadn't been through a process of going, right, let's look back, let's look at the whole thing and work out whether we're doing things in the right way and what we're truly spending our time on. Because the stuff we like doing, it's, if we like doing it, we'll do more of it. And then we don't really recognize that actually, is that the best use of our time?
Exactly.
So the question we always ask ourselves, and I ask the coachees that I have, is, when you want to go and volunteer in Namibia, and you might be in the middle of a reserve, ear notching rhino or something, you don't want to have that phone call saying, oh, I've got a problem. You don't want to be worried that there's a problem with your business. You want to know that there's people there that can pick these things up on your behalf. And there's somewhere you can go to on a regular basis on a laptop to go, okay, things are going well. So Yeah.
I think that letting go is one of the most challenging things that most business owners have. And I know for me, that took me many years. And I started out thinking only I would be able to find the right tenants, or I would I would be able to manage I have student properties. Only I would be able to negotiate with the parents when there's some issue or whatever. And it was always only I. When in reality, what people want as customers, they just want to get service quickly and get a reasonable result. And as long as those two boxes are ticked, you don't need to be the best of the best of the best. You can strive for that, and it's always great to have that your eyes set on perfection. But actually, that perfection can get in the way of progress, and actually being accepting that other people can do a job actually probably better than you in 99% of cases, because that's all they have to focus on. That's all they have to think about. They're not spinning the 50 other plates that a business owner is. So, I think it's,
the other way to look at it, and I think, when I was going through your program, was also to say, well, what's your time worth? What's your hourly rate? And I remember working that out and thinking, this is the point. This is the whole point. If my hourly rate is £150 an hour because I'm good at finding the next deal or doing a commercial deal, that's £150 an hour. If I'm spending time doing some marketing or sorting out a problem, is that £150 an hour task? No, of course it isn't. Just because I think I enjoy doing it, that questioning myself all the time was a routine that we got into, and John would ask me, is that good use of your time? And I would challenge him in the same way. And we still do, actually.
And it's so easy to fall into it. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there, which is just because you like it doesn't mean you should. And I think it's one of the things that a lot of people they talk about when they talk about outsourcing is, get rid of all the stuff you hate. And I actually have said that many, many times. But I think that what the caveat to that is that it's not just the stuff you hate. And when I talk about the first thing you should ever outsource, it's always what is taking you the longest amount of time and what do you know best? Because actually, and often the stuff you like is what you know best. But that's the easiest stuff to give somebody because you know it. So you can explain it to them really well. Whereas if and the stuff you don't really like, you often don't know so well. And so, I totally, music to my ears hearing you say this, Bronwen, because it is so true. And just seeing the value of your time, but I always say not only in monetary sense as well, but, you could say 150, it could be £500 an hour, whatever your time is worth. It could be £50 an hour, it doesn't matter. But the point is, would you rather be dealing with a phone call, doing some marketing, or sitting on a beach, or hanging out with your kids, or baking a cake, or in the garden, or whatever it is that you really are passionate about in life?
Yes.
And that's the value that matters, not how much you enjoy the work. The work is there. No. Many parts of work are there as a means to an end. Absolutely. So,
and I never thought I would write a book, because that takes a lot of effort, a lot of brain power, a lot of time. And there's no way I would have even considered it before I'd outsourced a lot of other stuff. And would I write another one? I'd probably not. But having that time, and also being in Australia, that just made it easier. So if you can have location freedom through systems as well, and you don't need to physically be in the UK, then doing things like writing a book was just so much easier in the Whitsundays in Australia where we were. And then learning about how can you maximize your use of your home. We rented our house out. We holiday let it, all those things that you suddenly have time to think about strategically that for other people can take years and years. To have done what we've done in 7 years in total from scratch. People are like really inspired by it, but it was only possible not because I'm brilliant at anything particularly. I'm quite good at podcasts. I'm really good at finding great people like yourself. That was through Christian introducing you, but it's networking. And
Christian Rodwell. He'll be on the show very, very soon, actually.
Good, quite right too. So yes, it's networking, it's working with great people and trying to find experts to help. Yeah.
Brilliant. This has been a lot of fun so far, and I just have a few more questions just to wrap up things, really. But I did have one actually. I asked you what some things I could ask you, and I just wanted to go to that because what systems or technology has made the biggest difference for you being able to work remotely? I know you mentioned Asana as one and LastPass.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other game-changing apps, software, systems that you've implemented that have just, you know, turn the light bulb on for you to what is possible?
Well, when I started my online education program for property, creating webinars and being able to coach via Zoom, that transformed it. That made it so easy. I set my business up 4 months before John left the UK. I wanted to have my own business to take around the world. It's something I'm really passionate about, is helping other people learn. And without having Zoom and the ability to record easily and effectively and to be able to coach people, just as in the conversation we're having face to face, absolutely transformed it. It just made me completely confident that the system was going to work. I just wish I'd bought shares in Zoom, because this was a few years back now, in 2017.
Pre-pandemic, yeah.
Now everyone knows what it is.
Yeah.
So Zoom, Calendly, being able to have people book their coaching appointments or their free 30-minute consultation with me on a diary system that I can work with any time zone in the world. So if I was in China and then I was going to be traveling to Seattle, that's quite a change in time zone. But I could set my time so that when somebody booked it in, it was in my diary, in my time zone in Seattle. And quite often I was coaching people, they didn't even know I wasn't in the UK. I wouldn't, maybe for my backdrop, but if I was indoors, it doesn't really matter. So it was seamless. So those two things, definitely. Screencast-O-Matic for recording things that I want people to do, that I learnt through yourselves. And what else? Oh gosh, so many little ones. But those are the big ones. Those are the big ones that I feel confident about. Editing videos now using Screencast-O-Matic. You're probably going to tell me there's a better one now to use, but I still use it now. I was on it just this morning, editing a video that I'd done with somebody. And I thought, this is so easy. But a few years ago, I would have been really scared. I would have probably paid someone else to do it, and it would have cost me a fortune, or not done it at all, probably.
No, I still rate Screencast-O-Matic. I think it's the best all-in-one recording, editing, hosting, team recorder out there. There are other apps available, but I think that is, and it's the most affordable of all of them. And especially when you start scaling with a team as well, it's a fraction of the cost of things like Loom, and the editing is included. The only other one we use now, just to answer your question, is for doing marketing videos when we want to do overlays and drop-ins and animations and things. We use Filmora.
Oh yes, Filmora.
Which is a very inexpensive, easy to use app for doing that type of more fancy editing. But all our day-to-day editing and recording for operation manuals and SOPs, that's all still done on Screencast-O-Matic. So
good.
No, I don't think I don't think we really changed anything since you run the program, to be honest. And that's not because we've been sitting on our hands or being complacent. It's just that I'm not a believer in jumping to every shiny new penny. If something offers great improvements and will improve efficiency dramatically, it's worth a change. But if not, actually, it's more important just to learn a piece of software or an app and get your head into it properly. So task management tool, we talk about Asana, but there's other great ones out there. There's ClickUp, there's Monday.com, there's even Trello to some extent. I'm not a massive fan of Trello, but I know a lot of people like it. It doesn't matter which one you're using, as long as you're using it like a pro. And so that's the important thing for me. So anyway,
and it's being consistent with it. as I said, we pushed back quite hard. We found it really challenging to have to learn again and think differently. But you've really got to stick with it. That's the message, stick with it, because these things work really well. And then stick with it with your team as well, because they've got to go through the pain of learning. But it's really, really worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, on that note, from personal experience over the past 4 years, I think one of the biggest mistakes we ever made was changing our CRM and our email automation. I think we changed it 3 times in 3 years, and the upheaval on the team is huge. And it's just, chasing the shiny pennies. It's a lesson I've learned very, very the hard way, so to speak. And so sticking with something, getting your team involved, getting them up, because everything you teach, you can, like you said before, you record what you're teaching. So once you've, say if I was showing somebody how to use Asana to do a specific thing, you hit record it, and now you've got a training video. If you then change what task manager you're using, every single video, or whichever piece of software you're talking about, every video that involves that piece of software now has to be redone. So be really mindful of that. I think it's a really great lesson to learn. So thanks for bringing it up. Cool. Okay. Fine. Last 3 questions, or 3.5 questions for you. Who do you think would be a great next guest or guests on this podcast?
Oh, so Christian was one who was going to be one.
Christian Rodwell, he's coming on soon.
Christian Rodwell. Who else? My goodness. I have to have a think.
Okay.
I'll have to come back to you on that. Yes.
What does success mean to you?
Well, success is location freedom and feeling confident to hop in our car, as we're going to do on Thursday, go camping, traveling from Namibia, the coast where we are now, to Botswana, and just knowing that we're confident, we don't need to worry. Being away from the UK as long as we have, again, for the 3rd time, this is the only time that we've both felt like we can just chill and relax and know that the systems we've got in place work. So success is just hopping in our car. We're getting a rooftop tent today. We're going to be driving a few thousand kilometers and going to the Okavango in Botswana. We'll be there by the beginning of June. We leave on Thursday, so there we go. So in a couple of days' time. That's success, for me. And I love to inspire other people that they can do this stuff. It doesn't have to be this extravagant in terms of other countries. It just means you could go run a marathon, you could go train, do something that you've always wanted to do that you just thought, I'll never get the chance, or it'll happen when I retire, or when I, it's always when I can get my pension. And I always challenge people now, because I wish I'd learnt what I know now 20 years ago. So I'm teaching an 18-year-old at the moment. Would you believe it? I'm teaching an 18-year-old how to invest in property. And I'm going, crikey, I didn't even know about this stuff till I was in my 40s, late 40s. So, I think the sooner you can start, the better.
I was very lucky. I fell into property the minute I left. Even before I left university, I'd bought my first property, and it gave me a freedom which I have enjoyed for the whole of my life. And it's doing stuff not quite as extravagant in some ways as you. I know I have sailed across the Atlantic, and I've climbed quite a lot of big mountains in the world, and spent months traveling. And it's just that, the ability to have for me, it was the income. I hadn't got the systems of the outsourcing in place. So unfortunately, I did get those phone calls when I was halfway up a mountain sometimes, and I can't get in my property. I was like, what do you want me to do about it? But, so it took me a while to get to where you are now, but, or where we are now, I should say. But
well, anyway. My kids are older, 27, 24, so we've got that freedom, that family freedom. Our parents are no longer with us, and they'd be the first to just go, hey, you're living the life you've always dreamt of. And I'm encouraging younger people, including my children, to really understand how is it possible. And those myths that you grow up with, always pay your mortgage off, and property is really risky. Don't believe it. There's certainly ways to escape. So,
yeah. Fantastic. Okay, final question for you now. Do you believe you can systemize your success, and why?
Of course, absolutely you can. Why? Because you don't always have the skills, and you certainly don't have the knowledge and all the things you need to have to run a business and to be successful. You can stay in the rat race and, have a corporate job and just wait until you retire. But there's a different world out here. If you truly want to run a business and be free to have choices in your life, then you have to have systems and other people to help you. So yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. I will put contact details in our show notes, but just for people listening in, how can they find and engage with you?
You can find me on all social media. LinkedIn, Facebook are the two primary ones. You've got my contact details. People can connect with me, book an appointment for a chat. I have a free half-hour consultation. And then, of course, my book. I know people won't necessarily be watching this, but Building Your Dream Life, my book is on Amazon. And I have a website as well. So so many different ways. That's my challenge to anyone listening to this, is to follow through, take action, book a chat with me. So many people go, oh, maybe next week, maybe the week after, and put it off. But I tell you, the ones that take action are the ones that end up being successful. I've got plenty of examples of people that I've helped to escape since I started in 2017. So here's my challenge back to people listening to this. Book a chat with me and I can certainly help.
Yeah, and having watched the background for the whole of this video of you in the beautiful blue skies with palm trees sitting on top of a roof, you are 100%, living that dream that you talk about in the book. You do walk the walk. And so I encourage anybody who's thinking about getting into property or just coaching about how to actually create a life outside of the traditional 9-to-5, traditional work, then just contact Bronwen. She's hopefully you've got her from the podcast, but she's an absolutely lovely person and someone I've had the pleasure of working with now for a few years. So it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today. I'm really glad you suggested this to come on, because I actually reached out to Bronwen to let her know the podcast was launched, and she goes, "Oh, I'd love to come on and talk to people." I was like, "What a brilliant idea!" So I'm going to give you credit for that one as well, Bronwen. So thank you very much indeed for taking the time out.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Cheers.
Cheers.